We are what our choices make us. Do we walk the 15 minutes to work, or do we take an Uber? Do we hit the snooze button, or do we rise early? Do we have the difficult conversation, or do we avoid it? Is good enough truly good enough? Will we resolve to be better this year, or stay the same? It is our choices that define us. The Stoics believed that a beautiful life is built on beautiful decisions. The quality of your life depends on the quality of your choices. According to them, the only path to freedom, strength, and wisdom is through consistent and purposeful action. Progress does not come by accident. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly. There must be time. Give your best and let your effort bring its reward." This video is a Stoic exploration of the most essential question we can ask ourselves. Who will you be? Will you drift or will you decide? Will you conform or will you cultivate? Will you blame or will you build? Each chapter that follows is a lesson in what it means to form yourself through deliberate action. It is a reflection on the choices that define character and the practices that shape a Stoic life. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The Foundation of Choice. The Stoics taught that everything begins with choice. The ancient Greek term prohairesis was their word for our rational faculty, our ability to choose how we respond. According to Epictetus, this is the only thing that truly belongs to us. All else, our bodies, our possessions, our status, is external. When you realize that your choices are what make you free or unfree, strong or weak, everything changes. It's not your circumstances that define you, it's how you face them. This belief is the foundation of Stoic practice. In modern life, this means stepping back from automatic behaviors and taking a deliberate pause before acting. We are often driven by habits we don't even notice. We wake up and immediately check our phones. We open social media before our feet touch the floor. We react to emails, messages, headlines, without thought. This reactive mode is the opposite of the Stoic mindset. The Stoics taught that we must bring conscious awareness to our actions. Every moment offers a chance to step back and examine what we are doing and why. Every action should begin with reflection. Ask, why am I doing this? What am I aiming for? Is this aligned with my principles? What outcome am I expecting? And is it within my control? These are not just philosophical questions. They are tools for everyday life. When someone cuts you off in traffic, you can either yell or breathe and move on. When your plans are disrupted, you can complain or adapt. The difference lies in whether you pause to reflect before reacting. This pause is where growth begins. The Stoics practiced this form of mindfulness through daily exercises. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, began and ended each day by journaling. He asked himself what kind of man he wanted to be, what mistakes he had made, and how he could improve. This wasn't performance, it was training. You don't need to write long passages or sound profound. A few minutes of honest reflection, perhaps 3 sentences, is enough to begin changing how you relate to the world. To cultivate this way of living, begin by observing your patterns. Do you reach for your phone the moment boredom appears? Do you interrupt people out of impatience? Do you overcommit because you fear disappointing others? Start noticing these habits. Write them down. Track how often they occur. Noticing them weakens their grip. Reflection is the first step towards self-direction. Also consider how you respond to difficulty. When plans fall apart, do you shift blame or seek solutions? When you face criticism, do you react with defensiveness or pause to understand? Each reaction is a choice, and each choice either sharpens or dulls your character. The Stoics believed that life is a series of tests, and each decision is a chance to practice virtue, courage, patience, justice, temperance. This is not about perfection. it is about awareness. When you notice your behavior and choose to improve, you begin shaping your character. Over time, your life becomes a result of conscious actions instead of automatic habits. You stop being swept away by impulse and begin to lead yourself through reflection. When the foundation of choice is clear, you begin to build a life based on reason. You take responsibility for your actions. You stop outsourcing your moods and your outcomes to circumstances. You create space between stimulus and response. That space is where virtue grows. You act with intention rather than reaction. You respond with discipline rather than emotion. You become someone who leads themselves, not occasionally, but as a way of life. Chapter 2. The Discipline of Action. A Stoic is defined by their commitment to right action. Thoughts and beliefs are important, but it is action that gives them life. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Discipline is the practice of bringing your will into alignment with your goals. It is the daily decision to act with purpose rather than drift with impulse. Discipline is doing what you said you would do, not only when it's convenient or when motivation is high, but especially when it's difficult or tedious. It is showing up, following through, and honoring your commitments with consistency. This discipline is not a form of punishment. It is a form of self-respect. It is a demonstration of inner control and clarity of direction. It is the power to shape your life through repeated and intentional effort. Each day, you are in training. Whether you acknowledge it or not, your actions are reinforcing certain tendencies. Your habits are either sharpening your character or making it dull. Every time you delay a task for the sake of temporary comfort, you reinforce avoidance. Each time you complete what you said you would do, even when it's hard, you reinforce resilience. The process is cumulative. Each small decision adds to a greater pattern. There is no such thing as neutral behavior. Over time, these patterns determine how you respond under stress, how you interact with others, and how you view yourself. To develop discipline, begin with clear, manageable practices. Make a commitment to wake up at a specific time and follow through without negotiation. Establish routines that support your goals. Choose one meaningful task each day and accomplish it without excuse. These actions are not about appearing busy or efficient. They are about building a relationship of trust with yourself. When you consistently do what you said you would do, you start to believe in your own capacity. Your sense of agency increases. You stop relying on fleeting motivation and instead lean on structure and clarity. This is how discipline becomes part of your identity. The Stoics recommended voluntary discomfort as a way to build mental strength and detachment from luxury. This could mean skipping a meal to reflect on hunger, waking up early every day, even on weekends, committing to morning workout regimen of push-ups, NAD sit-ups, even when you don't feel like it, walking instead of taking transportation to practice effort, or taking cold showers to condition your tolerance for stress. These acts aren't about deprivation. They are about training your perception. When you choose small challenges willingly, you cultivate endurance. You build a habit of facing what is uncomfortable without hesitation. You reduce your dependency on favorable conditions. You learn that peace does not require comfort, and progress does not depend on ease. Each of these practices strengthens the will. You learn that your feelings do not have to dictate your actions. You can be tired and still show up. You can feel discomfort and still remain composed. You can want to quit and still choose to continue. These are the lessons of voluntary hardship. They build emotional resilience that prepares you for the trials of daily life. Action must reflect your values. If you believe in courage, your life must show courageous actions. If you believe in honesty, you must speak with integrity even when it is inconvenient. Discipline gives your principles a structure to live within. Without consistent action, values are untested and uncertain. With discipline, values take shape through lived behavior. You begin to embody what you believe. To live according to Stoic principles is to build a reliable bridge between intention and behavior. You cease to allow temporary moods to dictate your efforts. Instead, you hold yourself to a standard that endures across time and changing circumstances. This requires you to view discipline not as a phase to return to when convenient, but as a fixed element of your character. It becomes part of your posture toward life, part of how you meet each day and each demand. This means placing effort before comfort, choosing responsibility over momentary ease, and letting clarity take priority over confusion. When you commit to this path, you begin to act with the understanding that repetition is not monotony, it is mastery. You show up because the act of showing up reshapes who you are. Each repetition trains your will, just as each lift strengthens a muscle. You begin to take ownership not only of what you do, but of who you are becoming. Through repeated, steady action, you condition your body and mind to follow a rational and purposeful course. You learn to follow reason over reflex. You practice doing the right thing, even when it is small, and especially when no one is watching. Over time, the effort builds upon itself. The small decisions compound. You are not simply doing tasks, you are forming a consistent identity. You are transforming your day into something structured and meaningful. You begin to move from occasional motivation to sustained commitment, from a few good habits to a full way of life, from fleeting effort to lifelong direction. And in that direction, you find freedom, not freedom from effort, but freedom through it. You no longer depend on external discipline, you carry it within yourself. The choices you make each day reinforce the kind of person you have resolved to be. Chapter 3. The Mirror of Reality. The Stoics believed that philosophy is not escape, it is confrontation. It is not meant to shield you from discomfort, but to prepare you to meet it directly. Philosophy to them was a tool for facing the real conditions of life with clarity and composure. Growth begins the moment you stop avoiding and start observing. You must look at life as it is, not as you hope, fear, or assume it to be. This begins with clarity. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of our pain does not come from what actually happens, but from the story we tell ourselves about what happens. A single event occurs, and our mind spins countless interpretations, assumptions, and future projections. These mental layers become heavier than the original moment. The Stoic practice is to separate the event from the judgment, to see things simply as they are. For example, if someone criticizes you, the objective reality is that words were spoken. That is the event. The feeling of being attacked or diminished is your response, shaped by past experience, ego, or insecurity. The Stoics called these impressions automatic mental interpretations that appear quickly and often distort the truth. When you take those impressions as fact, you surrender your clarity. You must pause, examine the reaction, and ask, is this true, or is this just my judgment? To master this skill, you need to develop a habit of examining your thoughts before accepting them. Just as a guard checks the identity of someone at the gate, you must check the nature of your interpretations before letting them settle in your mind. This practice is known as cognitive separation. Epictetus reminded his students that it is not events that disturb us, but our opinions about them. He taught that if you remove the opinion, the suffering often disappears with it. The mirror of reality sharpens you. It forces you to see not what is comfortable, but what is real. You stop being fooled by appearances and emotional coloring. You stop letting your assumptions dictate your decisions. This doesn't mean being cold or detached. It means being grounded. It means acting from facts rather than fantasies. When you see clearly, you make better decisions. You respond to what actually is, not to what you fear it might be. Practicing this kind of clarity is not easy. It requires continuous self-observation. You must catch yourself in the act of distortion. This happens in small moments, when you feel offended by a message, when you assume someone's silence means judgment, when you imagine failure before trying. Each time ask, what exactly happened? What am I adding to this moment? What would an objective witness say is true? What is in my control right now? This kind of inner questioning trains your mind to pause. That pause becomes your power. It is in the space between impression and response that you gain agency. You learn not to act on the first thought that arises, but to investigate it first. You develop the discipline to delay your reaction long enough to choose a wiser course. This is mental training. It's not about suppressing emotion, it's about correcting perception. Living in reality means you no longer run from what is difficult or uncomfortable. You stop building illusions to protect yourself. You look at things honestly. You evaluate them based on what is actually present. You give up the habit of dramatizing hardship or expecting perfection. You drop the unnecessary commentary and stay with the truth of the moment. From this grounded state, you become more stable. You are no longer swept away by anxiety, fantasy, or outrage. You stop being a passive consumer of your own thoughts and become an active evaluator. This shift is critical to developing wisdom. It allows you to respond instead of react, to analyze instead of assume, and to adapt instead of resist. The Stoics were not naive about how challenging this is. They knew the mind loves to wander. They knew fear and desire distort what we see. That's why they emphasized practice. The more often you return to clarity, the easier it becomes to maintain. Like sharpening a blade, it takes friction, consistency, and care. When you live in reality, you begin to accept that some things are difficult, some people are unkind, and some outcomes are outside your reach. But you also realize that these facts do not have the power to control your peace of mind. You find strength not in changing the world, but in aligning yourself with truth. You use every moment as material for awareness. You let life reveal itself as it is, and you rise to meet it, not with resistance, but with readiness. And in that process, you become grounded, you become clear, you become capable. Chapter 4. The company you keep. Your environment shapes you. The people you spend time with influence your thinking, your habits, your ambitions. They shape the standards you adopt and the mindset you bring to daily life. The Stoics urged caution in choosing your companions because they understood how powerful the influence of others can be, both for growth and for decline. Epictetus said, "The key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best." This is not about judging others as better or worse. It is about recognizing the effect others have on your direction. You are shaped by what you expose yourself to repeatedly. The people around you set the tone for what you consider normal, acceptable, or admirable. If you are surrounded by gossip, you may become careless with your words. Even if you do not participate directly, the tone begins to influence your thoughts. If you are surrounded by laziness, your standards may unconsciously drop. You might start to accept mediocrity as reasonable. If you are surrounded by growth, you will be pushed to rise, not through force, but through presence. The standards around you either elevate or suppress your own. In daily life, you must curate your influences carefully. This includes your social circle, your professional environment, and your digital world. Who do you spend time with? Who do you listen to? Who do you follow online? What ideas fill your attention throughout the day? This is not only about people, but about content, routines, and atmosphere. Everything you allow in becomes part of your internal framework. What you consume shapes what you become. This process is quiet but powerful. If you repeatedly expose yourself to people who complain, blame, or avoid responsibility, you begin to mirror those behaviors, even subtly. If you immerse yourself in excellence, discipline, and honesty, you will be more likely to reflect those traits. Influence is cumulative. Its effects emerge over time, and by the time they're obvious, your standards may already be set. Seek out those who live with intention. Observe those who are consistent, fair, thoughtful, and kind. Spend time with those who challenge you without hostility, who push you forward through example, not pressure. Avoid those who stir conflict without reason or who live in cycles of negativity. Choose to spend time with people whose presence brings clarity, strength, and direction into your life. But this is not only about external company. The company you keep also includes your own inner dialogue. The thoughts you repeat become your internal companion. Are your thoughts supportive or self-defeating? Are they focused or scattered? Do they align with your values or echo old fears and doubts? What you think about consistently becomes your lens for how you engage with the world. Managing this inner environment is just as important as managing your relationships. It involves noticing when your thoughts drift toward judgment, anxiety, or despair. It means redirecting them, not through denial, but through conscious reframing. The Stoics trained themselves to question their impressions and replace destructive patterns with reasoned, useful thoughts. You must build an environment, both internal and external, that supports the kind of life you are working toward. Surround yourself with reminders of who you are becoming. Keep your space clean and purposeful. Limit your exposure to noise and distraction. Choose mentors, even if only through books or recordings, whose lives reflect integrity and discipline. Let their presence, even at a distance, guide your own direction. Over time, this kind of intentional living creates momentum. You find yourself thinking more clearly. You feel less pulled into unnecessary drama. You are more resilient in your choices. You gain the quiet strength that comes from being supported by the right influences within and around you. And you begin to realize that the life you are shaping is not accidental. It is built from everything you allow into your mind and your world. Chapter 5. The Practice of Endurance. You also need rituals. When life is hard, simplify. Return to your habits. Keep your space clean. Take care of your body. Spend time in silence. These are not distractions. They are anchors. They give structure to uncertainty. They stabilize you when the world feels unstable. Even simple actions, making your bed, preparing a meal with care, going for a walk at the same hour, serve as reminders that you are still in command of how you show up. Rituals ground you in the present. They reduce mental noise and create rhythm. They remind you of your values when your emotions are loud. When things feel overwhelming, small, predictable habits bring a sense of clarity and order. They give your attention a place to land. They help you return to yourself. In times of difficulty, these practices become a kind of armor, not to shield you from pain, but to help you face it with structure. Silence is also a necessary part of this practice. In silence, your thoughts become visible. In stillness, you begin to hear what's beneath the noise. When life becomes chaotic, your instincts may push you toward distraction. But it is often stillness that heals confusion. Creating even a few minutes of quiet each day, no phone, no tasks, no conversation, can create the space you need to realign with your priorities. Endurance is not passive. It is not waiting for pain to pass while doing nothing. It is active acceptance. It means acknowledging the difficulty, feeling the full weight of it, and choosing to continue living in line with your principles. You don't pretend the pain isn't real. You don't ignore the situation. You face it directly and you decide not to be broken by it. This form of endurance is not dramatic. It is not loud or obvious. It often looks like quiet consistency, showing up to work when your heart is heavy, keeping your promises when no one would blame you for quitting, listening patiently when you are tired, taking care of others when you yourself feel uncertain. These acts may seem small, but they are powerful. They are the daily proof of your inner strength. Each time you endure, you prove to yourself that strength is possible. You send a message to your mind and body that you can handle more than you thought. You expand the boundary of what you can tolerate. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. You learn to carry weight with steadiness, not because it becomes lighter, but because you become stronger. That strength is not always visible to others. It shows up in how you continue, in how you stay composed, in how you return again and again to what must be done. You widen your threshold for discomfort. This does not mean you become numb or unfeeling. It means you stop letting discomfort control your decisions. You feel it fully, but you do not obey it. You walk forward even when your emotions push you to stop. You learn to act in spite of difficulty rather than waiting for it to disappear. This is the mark of resilience, not the absence of struggle, but the commitment to persist through it. You stop identifying with your suffering and begin to move with it, not around it, but through it. You carry pain without letting it become your identity. You allow challenges to be present without letting them define who you are. You begin to experience suffering as one part of life, not the whole of it. This mental shift is profound. It means you are no longer stuck inside the problem. You are navigating it. You are participating in your own survival, not passively, but actively. This is where real resilience is built, not as a fixed trait, but as a repeated choice. Over time, endurance becomes character. It becomes less of an effort and more of a way of being. You begin to meet the ordinary struggles of life, traffic, delays, conflict, uncertainty, with the same steadiness you brought to the larger trials. Your tolerance for frustration increases. Your ability to return to center improves. The daily inconveniences that once caused you to spiral or complain now become exercises in patience. Every moment becomes an opportunity to hold your form. This is how character forms, not through grand speeches or occasional inspiration, but through consistent behavior. You become someone others rely on because you first learned to rely on yourself. You become grounded in who you are, not in what happens to you. You develop the quiet strength of someone who has been tested and did not break. And most of all, you learn that pain is not the end of the road. It is part of the road. It is a signal, not a sentence. It brings information, not just discomfort. The Stoics did not seek pain, but they did not run from it. They accepted it as part of the human experience. They viewed pain as a teacher, sometimes harsh but always honest. It reveals your limitations and offers the chance to surpass them. Endurance is how you learn those lessons without losing your way. It's how you hold to your principles when it's easiest to abandon them. It's how you remind yourself of what truly matters when life becomes confusing. In those moments when emotions rise, when everything feels uncertain, endurance becomes a stabilizer. It helps you focus not on what is outside your influence, but on how you carry yourself through difficulty. You resist the pull of despair, not because you are unaffected, but because you are committed to staying the course. When you meet hardship with strength, when you stay rooted in your values despite chaos, you do more than survive. You evolve. You become more aware of your internal resources. You begin to see that many things you once thought would break you were simply moments that built you. You start to view every challenge, however disruptive, as an invitation to reaffirm your integrity. Your clarity grows. Your emotional stability becomes more resilient. You grow more confident in your ability to handle discomfort and change. You begin to see challenges not as interruptions, but as essential components of your development. Each one forces a choice: remain stagnant or step forward. Each time you step forward, you become stronger, and that growth prepares you for whatever comes next. You do not know the future. You do not control the storms ahead, but you prepare for them. You build within yourself the traits required to face adversity with dignity. You build habits that hold under pressure, values that do not shift with the wind, and strength that does not require recognition. You do not prepare by predicting every outcome. You prepare by becoming the kind of person who can handle any outcome with calm and resolve. You remain adaptable, yet unshaken, grounded, yet flexible, ready, not reactive, the one who keeps going, the one who endures, the one whose strength is no longer conditional but cultivated. Chapter 6. The Weight of Responsibility. To the Stoics, freedom was not found in doing whatever one pleased, but in accepting full responsibility for one's thoughts, choices, and actions. Responsibility is not a burden to be avoided. It is the path to maturity. When you take ownership of your life, you take command of your direction. This means you no longer blame others for how you feel. You no longer look for excuses when things go wrong. You stop saying, "This made me angry," and begin saying, "I chose to respond with anger." That shift is the essence of Stoic control. Epictetus taught that we should concern ourselves only with what is within our power, and our judgments and actions are always within our power. Responsibility is uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of helplessness. If you cannot blame others or circumstances, then the only place left to look is within. But this is also where real progress happens. By accepting your role in every situation, even when others fall short, you gain clarity about how to improve. This does not mean you accept abuse or wrongdoing. It means you take ownership of your reaction. If someone lies to you, they are responsible for their dishonesty, but you are responsible for how you respond. Do you retaliate? Do you remain composed? Do you cut ties or set boundaries? The choice is yours. Responsibility is your shield, not your weakness. Practicing this begins with language. Replace phrases like, "I had no choice," or "They made me do it," with "I chose to," or "I allowed myself to." These shifts hold you accountable and remind you that power lies within your response. When you practice this consistently, you become less reactive, more deliberate, and more centered in your values. Responsibility also means accepting the consequences of your choices. If you overcommit and become overwhelmed, you own that result. If you procrastinate and miss a deadline, you learn from it. If your words cause harm, you acknowledge their effect. If your planning falls short, you do not hide from the outcome. The Stoic does not shame themselves for falling short. They do not dwell in guilt or self-punishment. They reflect with honesty, and they adjust with purpose. Mistakes are not indictments. They are feedback. They are signs that something needs refinement. Ownership turns every failure into material for growth. This approach to responsibility builds maturity. It develops in you the habit of standing still when things go wrong instead of retreating or blaming. You start to ask better questions. What part of this was in my control? What can I do differently next time? How can I take this experience and become wiser from it? When you do this, you remove helplessness from your identity. You become someone who does not run from reality. You become someone who participates in shaping it. This mindset is rare in a culture where blame is often a reflex. People blame traffic for lateness, phones for distraction, or others for emotional outbursts. The Stoic sees this for what it is, a denial of power. By always pointing outward, people give away their strength. Responsibility is not about fault, it is about response. Even when something is not your fault, How you respond is still your choice. That is the Stoic advantage. It places you at the center of your life's direction. This kind of personal responsibility is the foundation of leadership, both of others and of the self. You cannot guide anyone if you cannot first guide yourself. When you take full ownership of your time, your energy, your attitude, and your reactions, you become trustworthy. Others begin to rely on you because you are grounded in your own standards. You show consistency in a world of excuses. You demonstrate reliability, not through what you promise, but through what you follow through on. Responsibility turns you into someone who acts without being pushed. You don't need constant oversight or motivation. You don't wait for ideal circumstances or external rewards. You do the work because you said you would. You live your values not because someone is watching, but because you've chosen them. That is real power, the kind that cannot be taken from you. It's not rooted in appearance, it's rooted in integrity. This power is available to anyone, but it must be cultivated. It does not appear all at once, and it does not arise through passive observation. It comes from practicing ownership daily, even when no one is watching and there is no immediate reward. It comes from the discipline of reviewing your decisions, both the wise and the unwise, and learning from each of them without denial or excuse. It comes from noticing when you've gone off course and correcting yourself deliberately, without waiting for circumstances or other people to intervene. It is a personal audit that must happen regularly. This cultivation of power also comes from resilience, from choosing not just how you act in good moments, but how you recover from your setbacks. Everyone faces failure, but not everyone returns stronger. You learn to ask, what can I learn from this? What should I change next time? What truth did this experience expose? Over time, this reflective habit builds a quiet inner strength. You start seeing yourself as someone who adapts instead of collapses, who learns instead of blames. That's how you grow, through the honest and repeated act of choosing accountability. That's how you become dependable, not just to others, but to yourself. You no longer need motivation to do what's right. Your character demands it. And that's how you become the kind of person who is capable of enduring and leading through anything, because you have trained your mind to stay steady, your values to stay firm, and your decisions to reflect principle, not impulse. Chapter 7. The Courage to Speak and Act. The Stoics valued courage not only in battle, but in daily life. Courage is not reserved for dramatic acts. It lives in every moment where fear and duty meet, speaking up when it is easier to stay silent, telling the truth when it is safer to hide, standing firm when pressure mounts. These are the real tests of courage. Seneca wrote that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is to be consistent in their principles. This kind of courage requires preparation. You cannot expect to act boldly if you have not trained yourself to live honestly. Start by telling the truth in small things. Speak with clarity. Say what you mean. When you feel discomfort rising before a difficult conversation, use that moment to steady yourself. Ask, what is the right thing to say? What would a person of character do? Let the answer guide your action. Courage also applies to action. There will be times when you doubt your abilities, times when you feel exposed, uncertain, or unprepared, times when your ideas, your work, or your decisions might be judged. These moments can trigger hesitation. They can invite you to play small, to wait, to stay quiet. But the Stoics would remind you, do it anyway. Step forward, not recklessly, but with integrity. Act in alignment with your values, even if fear is present. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the movement forward despite it. It is choosing what is right over what is comfortable. It is the steady decision to honor your principles, even when your emotions plead for safety. This principle applies just as much to ambition. If you have a calling, a goal, a project, begin. Don't wait for certainty. Don't wait until you feel fully ready. That moment rarely comes. Start where you are. Use what you already have. The Stoics would say, stop waiting and start moving. Do what is in front of you. Let your work be the evidence of your direction. You don't need guarantees before you act. You need commitment. You need the willingness to learn through doing. Even the smallest effort is more valuable than the grandest hesitation. Criticism will come. People will question your motives, your talent, your vision. Resistance will arise. You will encounter obstacles, delays, and doubt, both from others and from within. But the question remains the same. Will you let fear dictate your next move, or will you act according to your values? The Stoic answer is always the latter. Courage is not a single moment of boldness. It is a habit formed through repeated action. Each time you show up, even when you are uncertain, you strengthen that habit. Each time you do what is difficult, you become more capable. That strength accumulates. Over time, what once felt impossible becomes familiar. You increase your tolerance for discomfort. You increase your capacity for perseverance. To live with courage is to live without hiding. It does not mean you eliminate risk. It means you stop betraying your principles in order to feel safe. You speak honestly, even if your voice shakes. You show up to do the work, even when it might fail. You face discomfort because it is necessary for growth. Courage is not a heroic act. It is a practiced posture. It is a readiness to be seen and a willingness to act, especially when you would rather withdraw. The Stoic trains for this not once, but every day. They prepare through small decisions that add up over time. They choose integrity when shortcuts tempt them. They speak up in minor conflicts to build the confidence needed for greater ones. They confront small fears to become less shaken by larger ones. They strengthen their tolerance for uncertainty by placing themselves in situations that challenge predictability, by taking initiative without assurance, and by stepping forward even when the outcome is unknown. They practice saying the hard truth, not only when it is obvious or expected, but when it is inconvenient and vulnerable. They learn to hold discomfort in conversation without abandoning clarity. They do not seek confrontation, but they do not avoid it when it is called for. This honesty becomes muscle memory. Each expression of truth reinforces the habit of transparency. They make themselves useful in difficult situations, not to prove anything, but because their sense of purpose compels them to act. They become a source of steadiness for others, not through perfection, but through reliability. They build a mind that does not flee from pressure, but meets it with calm observation. They ask, what needs to be done? What is the right thing to do now? They do not react without thought, and they do not collapse in uncertainty. They hold themselves steady as a matter of training. Because the moments that require courage often come without warning. A moment of decision appears. Speak or stay silent. Act or hesitate. Stand firm or retreat. You won't have time to strategize or rehearse when the pressure is real. These moments arrive quickly, often disguised in the ordinary. A tense conversation at work, a moral disagreement with a friend, a risk you've avoided for years. All of these are tests. There is rarely time to prepare once the moment arrives. You must already be living in a way that allows you to meet those moments with steadiness. Your strength must already be in place, not built in the instant, but stored through practice. That strength is the result of countless small decisions made when no one is watching. It's the result of staying true to your values, even in moments that seem insignificant. Every time you speak up with honesty, every time you act when it would be easier not to, you are training for those moments. Courage then becomes less of a sudden performance and more of a practiced presence. It becomes the normal behavior of someone who has disciplined themselves to act in line with reason. And that strength is built through a lifetime of choosing action over avoidance, honesty over silence, and principle over fear. It's built through the courage to disappoint others when necessary, to remain aligned with what's right. It's reinforced by choosing clarity over approval and service over self-protection. Over time, these small acts accumulate. They become part of your identity. When the test arrives, you don't have to summon bravery. You simply continue living the way you've trained. These repeated acts create a foundation of character. They are what you stand on when courage is not optional, but required. Chapter 8. The Strength of Restraint. To the Stoics, strength did not only show itself in action, it also showed itself in restraint. The ability to hold back, to wait, to remain silent, or to walk away. These are signs of mastery over oneself. Restraint is a deliberate decision not to act on impulse. It is the discipline of control when reacting would be easy and possibly even justified. Seneca wrote, "It is a great thing to have the right strength, but it is a greater thing to know when to use it." This is the essence of Stoic restraint, knowing not just what you are capable of, but when it is wise to apply that capability. Restraint does not mean weakness. It means you have the power to act, but you also have the wisdom to wait. Modern life constantly invites reaction. Notifications, opinions, arguments, and disruptions push for immediate response. But a Stoic recognizes that reaction without reflection is surrender. The pause between stimulus and response is where reason has a chance to intervene. In that space, restraint lives. That space must be protected and cultivated. Practicing restraint starts with the tongue. Words can heal, but they can also harm. Once spoken, they cannot be taken back. In moments of anger, silence is strength. In moments of insult, patience is power. Restraint teaches us to delay gratification, to withhold judgment, to postpone unnecessary conflict. It teaches us to use time as a filter for what matters. Restraint also applies to consumption. Do you need what you are buying, or are you chasing comfort? Do you scroll for meaning or to escape from yourself? A Stoic practices restraint by learning the difference between desire and need. They do not starve themselves of joy, but they do not let appetite lead them. They question their urges. They delay their indulgence until reason has spoken. This kind of restraint builds an inner fortress. When others lose control, you remain grounded. When the crowd panics, you hold still. You become someone whose stability is evident and trustworthy. You carry calm into chaos. You don't need to dominate to feel powerful. You command yourself. That is strength. To cultivate this, practice waiting. Let someone finish speaking before you reply. Sit with discomfort before solving it. Choose stillness when you feel the urge to rush. Begin small. Delay a snack. Pause before you reply to a message. Skip a luxury for a week. These exercises teach you that you are not ruled by want. You can choose your timing. You can choose your expression. Restraint is not repression. It is self-governance. It is not about denying life, but about directing it. Through restraint, you protect your energy. You protect your integrity. You act only when your principles approve. You act only when your judgment is clear. That is how restraint becomes strength. That is how the Stoic becomes unshakable from within. Chapter 9. The Practice of Patience. The Stoics viewed patience not as passive endurance, but as active strength. Patience is the ability to hold steady without agitation. It is the ability to wait without complaint, to persist without panic, and to proceed without force. Patience is not weakness, it is control. It is the discipline of allowing time and nature to unfold without trying to impose your will on every moment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often that nature does not hurry, and neither should he. A Stoic understands that everything has its time, and that rushing the process often creates more disorder. When faced with delay, difficulty, or discomfort, the Stoic asks, "What can I do right now that aligns with my principles?" The answer is rarely to demand, to rush, or to complain. The answer is to wait well. Patience means choosing not to let frustration dictate your mood. It means recognizing that things often take longer than we hope, and that this is not a failure. It is simply reality. To train this, begin by noticing moments of tension, waiting in line, listening to someone who speaks slowly, dealing with unexpected setbacks. These are daily opportunities to practice calm. Patience also applies to personal growth. You cannot expect to change overnight. Habits take time to shift. Mindsets take repetition. A Stoic is consistent, not because progress is immediate, but because progress is earned. You keep returning to the work. You do not abandon the path because the rewards are delayed. You continue because it is right to continue. In relationships, patience is essential. People grow at different speeds. Not everyone understands what you understand. A Stoic does not demand immediate change from others. They lead by example. They accept what they cannot rush, and they focus on what they can nurture. Presence, kindness, understanding. To practice patience is to practice mastery over urgency. It is to remember that your peace is not controlled by speed or convenience. It is to hold your ground without resistance. You move forward, but without force. You do not stop, but you do not scramble. You trust the rhythm of effort and time. A patient person becomes trustworthy. They are not quick to anger, nor easily shaken. They make decisions based on reason, not impulse. They endure pressure without collapse. Their calm is not an accident. It is a practiced response. Patience, like every Stoic virtue, is trained. And with training, it becomes part of who you are, steady, centered, and untouchable by haste. Chapter 10. The Work of Becoming. To the Stoics, life was not about reaching a final version of oneself, but about continual formation. The work is never finished. Each day is part of the shaping process. Each moment is material. There is no fixed identity. There is only the ongoing decision to live with principle. Becoming is not a destination. It is a commitment. Epictetus reminded his students that the true goal of philosophy is to transform the self. It is not to speak cleverly or read widely. It is to change how you live. Every choice you make contributes to the person you are becoming. Every day you ask and answer the question, "Who will I be?" The Stoics believed that each action either strengthens your character or weakens it. You cannot stay the same through inaction. You are always moving toward virtue or away from it. This awareness calls for vigilance, not anxiety, but attention. You pay close attention to what you allow into your thoughts, how you spend your time, and how you speak and act. Becoming is a daily effort. It is returning to your principles when you've drifted. It is correcting course when you've strayed. It is apologizing when you've caused harm. It is forgiving when holding on becomes a weight. You become through the way you live, not once, but every hour. This is the Stoic's path, not perfection, but progress. The work of becoming also requires endurance. Some seasons will feel stagnant, others will feel chaotic. Growth is not always visible. Sometimes it's in the fact that you didn't quit. Sometimes it's in the patience you held during failure. Sometimes it's in the silence you chose instead of anger. These unseen moments are part of the process too. To live with the goal of becoming means you see each day as a practice ground. You test your discipline. You observe your thoughts. You build structure in your habits. You return to your journal. You reflect on your direction. You make time for stillness. This is not rigidity. It is devotion. It is how you keep your inner life clear and your outer life steady. A Stoic knows that character is not something you inherit. It is something you build. And rebuilding is always possible. No matter how many times you've fallen short, the next moment remains open. Who you were yesterday matters less than who you are choosing to be now. The future is not promised, but the present is here. This moment is yours. The choice is yours. And who you will be is still in your hands.